Hello everyone, my name is Sahdev Zala. Welcome to the SIG IBMCloud deep dive session. Thanks for coming. I work at IBM as senior engineer, and I also contribute to Kubernetes and etcd, and I'm one of the co-chair for the SIG.
And hi, I'm Richard Theis, also a co-chair for the SIG, and I work on the IBM Cloud Kubernetes service, on the networking team, and also on the Kubernetes delivery and pipeline team.
Thank you, Richard. All right, so here is an agenda. If you were here for the SIG intro session, we talked about SIG structure and a little bit deep dive in the overview. But today we're not going to go more in detail. However, I will just brief it in case you haven't made it to the intro session. Then we're going to talk about IBM Cloud Kubernetes service. We'll go a little bit more depth into the cloud provider architecture, and how we are adopting different releases of Kubernetes in IKS. We'll talk a little bit about IBM Cloud Private, and we're going to talk about the contributions that are made by the teams, the IBM Cloud team. In general, we have so many contributors from IBM. IBM is one of the top contributors in Kubernetes, but we're not going through all those contributions. We will talk more about the contributions from the cloud teams, from the SIG perspective. And then we're going to summarize, and we'd like to have some discussions around how we can make it better, any comments from you, and what you would like to see in the future SIG meetings, etc. All right, so it's a SIG which provides an open platform to discuss things around Kubernetes in both IKS and IBM Cloud Private (ICP). As you know, the conference program, it's a big thing in the community, in the Kubernetes. We've been talking about it in different meetings in past 3 days at the conference. So both IKS and ICP, they participate in the conference program, and they both are certified. And the SIG meeting, as you participate into it, you got to interact directly with the team that builds and operates IBM Cloud, both ICP and IKS side. You also, this is an opportunity for you to follow the evaluations that happens in IKS and ICP platforms. SIG structure, we meet every other week, every other Wednesday. All the videos for meetings are recorded, and they are on the YouTube. So here is a link. If you like, you can just go see all the past discussions there. We have 3 SIG leads. We try to have it a diversified group of lead there. We have Richard Theis, who is also a co-presenter today. He's from IKS. We have Khalid Ahmed, who is IBM Distinguished Engineer. He's unfortunately not here today because of conflict, but he leads from the ICP side, and myself from open source side. We would like to have even more diversified leadership going forward. Having someone from non-IBM side, from a different company. So if you like, please do participate in the SIG meetings, discussions, and you follow the leadership eventually that ladder. The charter is out there. You can take a look, and as I said, we'd like to have more people join the SIG mailing list and have discussions in the SIG channels. You can read more about the SIG at the link provided. This presentation is available online on the conference webpage, so you can download it later. This is just an overview of what we discuss in the SIG meetings. Besides the discussions on the Slack channels and mailing list, it's typically around Kubernetes, as mentioned earlier. We don't have any commercial discussions on IKS or ICP in the meetings. There are separate channels for those. But we talk about how we are leveraging Kubernetes, what's the upgrade strategy, or things like scalability, And then we also talk about the community side of the SIG, right? All the work going on, like maintaining the SIG. We are working with the cloud provider SIG, or eventually all other SIGs, the cloud provider SIGs may move as in sub-projects, so we would like to do that as well. and then any contributions, whether it's a PR, whether it's issues, any discussions that are made by the SIG members into the community. So that's just an overview and things at a high level. I'd like to have Richard now for the IKS.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with IKS, it's our IBM Cloud Managed Service for Kubernetes. And our goal with that service is to provide the management for you, to give you a good user experience so you can deliver your applications on IBM Cloud and then leverage IBM Cloud services, like Watson, AI, and Weather, and so on. And some of the new services that folks are now checking out, such as LogDNA or SysDig, which are pretty cool. So they're available. The IKS service is available in 6 regions worldwide, 25 data centers. And it's kind of the foundation we take forward with, as part of my role on the SIG is to how are people using Kubernetes there and what we can leverage from that and what we can learn and bring back to the community to iterate on that, operating Kubernetes at scale. If you want more information, there's a link there. You can check that out and get our docs. Now, one big important part of our managed service is certification, of course, and we want to be certified at all times. So we always submit results, even at the patch level, when we have updates to ensure that IKS is certified, conformant, and passes all the tests that are in the community. So you can see right now we have 3 releases in support. I've laid them out here, 1, 10, 11, and 12. Now with that, more of an interesting topic that I've been dealing with as of late is the Kubernetes release cycle and how it pertains to people keeping current, because this is a really important topic, especially with the recent security vulnerability in Kubernetes. And the fact that that vulnerability was patched by the community back to release 1.10, but not later. Because of the support structure that Kubernetes community has, they support 3 patch releases and then working on 1 actively in development. So it is an important topic because folks are struggling at times to stay current. We're seeing it in IKS, and I'm sure other cloud providers and other users are noticing this pain as well. If you just look at the year 2018 here, I've laid out on this chart the release structure, or not the release structure, the release dates for Kubernetes, and then IKS and Delta for that, and where we are in unsupported releases on IKS. So Kubernetes has had 4 releases, 1.10 through 13 this year. IKS has also had 4, but we're slight delta there. We're working on 1.13 right now. And then as far as unsupported is concerned, we have 1.7, 8, and 9 are now unsupported for IKS. So those things move quick. So you can imagine something that was supported at the beginning of the year. By the end of the year, you're in a herd if you're not keeping up. So there's with that, there's a community discussion going on about what does it mean to maybe extend support longer or have something as an LTS. And this is an important topic to Kubernetes itself and certainly to the cloud providers as it does impact them directly, and then obviously as an end user that cascades down. So I have my own opinions on the LTS idea and whether or not we should speed up, slow down. I mean, I kind of feel that LTS just passes the buck a little bit later in the whole process to give you an out, so to speak, and then what happens when you reach the end of the LTS, what happens next. So I mean, I'm certainly interested to hear back from our user community on this, and I know Kubernetes community as well. So if you're interested in this discussion, feel free to talk to me now or after, and also to get involved in the community, because the SIG release has a working group around this. So with that, so not only is releasing Kubernetes on the top of our priority list, but also taking what we learn while running Kubernetes at production and scale and getting some areas that maybe we need new features on, such as a networking area and egress network policies and so on. I mean, these are important things for our customers, so we take those, and these are just some of the areas where we collaborate with the community on what kind of features we need in IKS and what needs to go back to the community for support for everyone else. So networking, scalability, storage, these are just some of the areas. We certainly contributed in a lot of other areas as well. But I want to talk about in a little more detail now is the cloud provider, since it's a pretty key component to when we deliver Kubernetes on IBM Cloud as part of the Kubernetes service. The cloud provider is our interface between Kubernetes and the cloud. And this is no different. This architecture diagram is a general diagram from the community. It pictures the Kubernetes Controller Manager architecture, also known as the KCM. And you can see this is the current architecture used by most cloud providers, where the connection between Kubernetes and the cloud is done in various locations. So you primarily have the connections in the Kube Controller Manager to provide implementations for some cloud features such as the load balancer, API server as well. And on the kubelet side, there's connections in there to the cloud to allow you to manage nodes. So you can look at this diagram and say, wow, that's a lot of connections, and we need to simplify that, and that's certainly the path forward on what the community wants to do. Now, the Cloud Controller Manager, or the Kube Controller Manager code here, we build in our cloud provider into that code, as well as the API server and the kubelets, and that's what a lot of the other cloud providers do as well. So what's in this? So beyond this being the architecture, so what actually does IBM Cloud Kubernetes Service do with these interfaces? So I just laid out at a high level on the big bullets there are the interfaces on the cloud provider, and then sub-bullets describe what we're doing at those interface levels. Okay. So the primary interface for us is the load balancer interface, which we implement our load balancer for IKS. It's an in-cluster load balancer service leveraging Kubernetes resources. So if you spin up a load balancer in IKS, it actually creates a deployment in Kubernetes that manages a VIP using KeepAliveD. And it provides the routing in cluster using kubeproxy. So that's on the overlay. On the underlay in the IBM Cloud Network, that is also managed. That's managed outside on the cloud networking side. So that, along with we have a couple versions. In the latest release, 1.12, we have a beta version of an IPVS-based load balancer. Our first version, and as our default, is an IP tables-based load balancer in cluster. Beyond that, we do basic implementations, stub implementations to complete the cloud provider requirements for instances and node management, and then zones. And primarily have our IKS bootstrapping process handle the rest of that work. And then there's a couple other interfaces, clusters, which we don't implement, and then routes. Now we use Calico in IKS, so that's our overlay network, the underlay provided by the IBM Cloud Network. But so since we provide the overlay with Calico, the routing and the network mesh sets everything up. So we don't have to do any additional implementation in the cloud provider to handle routes. So that's what it is today. This is the architecture of tomorrow and where the community is heading, not only for IKS and our IBM Cloud provider, but also other cloud providers as well. So we want to transition. I'm going to slide back a couple slides here. This is the current way. And you can see on the master side the components there for the controller manager, API server, and scheduler. And then if we move forward to this architecture, you'll see the cloud controller manager comes into the picture here. And that's going to be responsible for connecting to the cloud and performing those same interface operations, but on more of a well-defined boundary, so that you can now decouple the cloud controller manager and the cloud provider code from Kubernetes. So there's a lot of benefits to this. First of all, cloud providers don't have to build and carry each other's code around. We get smaller binaries in the end result, smaller container images for deploying these components, and a nice, cleaner interface for everyone involved. So we kind of leveled the playing field for all the cloud providers, but it is going to be an important part of this whole thing, and not only just for IBM, but for Google and others, is that we need to provide for folks that are on this architecture a clean transition to migrate them without downtime to this architecture. So that is one of the bigger challenges, as well as the code restructuring, the interface management, and so that's going to be one of the higher priorities for our SIG and for IBM this year is with respect to our cloud providers to achieve this goal. I put a TBD here on what do we actually have to do from a load balancer perspective on IBM Cloud Provider. We really shouldn't have to do much there. I don't anticipate changes. Changes more likely will come in the management of nodes and zones as we no longer run in the kubelet. You run in the Cloud Controller Manager. And then nothing in the clusters or routes. So that's a high level. Any questions on that? Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to Sahdev and we'll head over to the IBM Cloud Private.
I just want to mention here the open source, open standard sides of the IBM Cloud Private, that it's built with open standards. As you can see here, it's based on Kubernetes. It runs the Docker. It uses a Docker engine to run your containerized Docker images. Helm is something we use heavily. There are several Helm charts out there on the GitHub IBM repo for a lot of IBM middleware and other applications. And Terraform is the layer. It's another open source project if you don't know, but that's what we use for provisioning at the infrastructure level. Here is a simple architectural diagram for the IBM Cloud Private. As you can see right at the bottom, that it runs the master on the x86 and Power Linux, and the third one, which looks very incomplete there, the Z Linux, which is right now you can that's where you can run your worker nodes and you can mix and match between all this platform. But the support for Z Linux to run your master, it's just coming sooner. I think it should be announced soon in maybe by end of this month. And we believe that as your cloud gets bigger, right, the number of nodes you are running, just one master node is not the right choice. You're going to have multiple master nodes for HA. You will be using like a proxy node on its own, and then management nodes, right, so that you do not load the master so much. So typically it has not just the master node, but proxy nodes and the management nodes. And then you run worker nodes on top of it. And as I mentioned earlier, all IBM provided services are there for you to use. And you're going to run your app workloads on top of it. This is just I want to quickly mention that it comes in 3 flavors. There's a community edition for you to use for free. You can just run it on your laptop if you're interested and play with it. And there is a cloud native editions where, as it's mentioned here, it's mainly for enterprise developers. It comes with micro climate or microservice builder earlier to develop your applications, and it comes with Web for Liberty and other IBM softwares. If you go one above edition, which is enterprise one, it comes with extra softwares there. I want to mention here the contributions, the discussions IBM Cloud Private team is doing in the Kubernetes space. As you can see, those couple diagrams on this left, those a few months old, but IBM is one of the top contributors, as I mentioned earlier. We're not going to talk on those things. We want to talk about, again, the contributions or engagements from the IBM Cloud Private team with the community. So first one there is the Kubernetes Federation V2. As we know that as you move to using Kubernetes, more cloud native technologies, right? You're not going to have just one cluster. There will be multiple Kubernetes clusters around. And down the road, you want to do things like resource sharing, right, between multiple clusters. So that's where the work is going on. We have 3 guys participating there. As you can see, IBM is like number 3 there. Helm, as I mentioned, we use Helm heavily, and we contribute back to the community. Cluster registry is another small project which basically provides a catalog for APIs for your multi-cluster environment. We have IBM Multi-Cloud Manager, and that's what uses the cluster registry. So with that, I just want to summarize the talk and then just have some discussions, any questions from you. But it's a SIG for open discussions around Kubernetes on IBM public and private clouds, which are IBM Cloud Kubernetes Service and IBM Cloud Private. We would love to have more folks joining the SIG and participate in the discussions, help us get better. As I mentioned earlier, we would like to have SIG leadership from non-IBM folks as well. So if you are interested, please join, and we can work on the leadership side. IBM Cloud teams contributes a lot into the community, and as Richard mentioned earlier, our near-term goal, it's under investigation right now, is to open source the IBM Cloud provider interface and the architecture earlier he walked through. With that, any questions? Anything you want to discuss? Yes, ma'am.
How do you see this shifting with the Red Hat version, or I don't know if you want to call it version, with Red Hat coming in? I noticed you had Cloud Foundry.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's an optional options for the customer, right, around the IBM Cloud Private. Well, right now, I think it's that was a big news, the Red Hat acquisition, right? Right now, it's business as usual. Red Hat is Red Hat, IBM is IBM, as far as I know. It's my personal statement. So whatever offering I mentioned from IBM side, it's going to be what I just and Richard explained. I'm not seeing anything down the road unless the integration happens, and I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But right now, it's business as usual. Anyone to add on that?
Just have one more question. How many, you said IBM Cloud team, how many people are in the IBM Cloud team?
Several, and I mean, from development side or in general development, sales, development side?
That's actually a very complex question because IBM Cloud.
Here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Jeff, 1 second, please.
Is it on here?
So
There.
the easy answer is thousands, and it depends on how you slice and dice the word cloud, because we have the public cloud team, and we also have the hybrid cloud team that works on the on-premises ICP deliverable. So between the two, and then it depends on if you want to include the developers that would be producing cloud services. So, but even with core, just cloud platform team, you're talking several thousand from development perspective.
Any comments on IBM, Red Hat? Anyone want to add there? I mean, to me, it's
No, nothing beyond.
Yep.
Full disclosure, I'm with Red Hat.
No.
No, so we love open source. Red Hat loves open source. We're all going to love open source together.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely. Just making open source better, yeah.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, we had the same strategies, right? And so it's a matter of being able to combine forces. I'm personally really excited to bring in a lot of the culture for your open source and your contributions and things like that, so that we can add that. Your developer outreach programs are fantastic. We both have fantastic engineering teams. We'll combine those together, reassign squads, and then take over the hybrid cloud market, in my opinion. But those details of that are being discussed at a
I know.
independently. It's for legal reasons, they have to be discussed even independently at a company level.
Well, good questions. Any other questions? And say join the SIG, be part of the discussions. We would love to have you guys for the future meetings, Slack, whatnot, all kind of discussions. So, anything
I don't
else
have
from
anything
you,
else.
Richard?
Yeah, thank you for coming. Staying late on the end of the conference here.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
All right, thank you.